My name is Ramona, and I am 67 years old. After teaching elementary school for 4 decades, retirement should have been peaceful. When my husband Frank died, I continued supporting my son Michael and his wife Tiffany financially, even paying their mortgage. I never imagined my generosity would lead to such heartbreak, especially being excluded from their Mother's Day celebration. But actions have consequences, and their next mortgage check was canceled by me. If you're watching this from a place where family comes first, I'd love to hear where you're from in the comments. Please subscribe if you want to hear how I stood my ground. Frank and I built our life carefully over 40 years. He was a brilliant accountant who made smart investments while I taught 3rd grade. We never lived extravagantly despite our growing nest egg choosing, instead to focus on our only son, Michael. We wanted him to have everything we didn't. Michael was such a bright child, always curious, always asking questions about how things worked. Frank would spend hours showing him how to fix things around the house while I helped with his homework and school projects. We were so proud when he got accepted to Cornell University on a partial scholarship. Of course, we covered the rest of his tuition, housing, and expenses. It was never a question for us. That's what parents do. It was during his junior year when Michael met Tiffany. He brought her home for Thanksgiving, and she seemed sweet enough, pretty polite and studying marketing. She complimented my cooking and asked questions about our family photos. I remember Frank whispering to me that night, "She seems nice, but I sense she has expensive taste." I laughed it off then. Their wedding 3 years later was beautiful, though much grander than we had expected. Tiffany wanted an elegant country club reception with all the trimmings. Her parents contributed what they could, but Frank and I ended up covering about 70% of the costs. Again, we didn't mind. It was our only son's wedding day. After graduation, Michael landed a good job as a software engineer at a tech company. Tiffany worked her way up at a marketing firm, eventually becoming an executive. They seemed to be doing well financially, but I started noticing some concerning patterns. Tiffany always had the latest designer handbag. Their vacations were always at 5-star resorts. When I mentioned to Michael that they should be saving more, he would smile and say, "We work hard, Mom. We deserve to enjoy life." Then came the grandchildren. Emma was born first, followed by Jack 3 years later. Those were some of the happiest years of my life. Frank and I would babysit regularly, taking the kids to the park or the zoo. We set up college funds for both grandchildren right away. Everything seemed perfect. But then Frank got sick. Pancreatic cancer. It moved so fast. Within 8 months, he was gone. I was devastated, but I had to keep going. Frank had handled all our finances throughout our marriage, but he made sure to teach me everything before he passed. I was surprised to discover just how well off we actually were. Frank had been even more clever with our investments than I realized. About a year after Frank died, Michael and Tiffany started talking about wanting a bigger house in a better school district for the children. Their current 3-bedroom townhouse was getting cramped, they said. I understood that. What I didn't expect was Tiffany showing me listings for mini mansions in the most exclusive neighborhood in town. "We can't afford these," Michael admitted when I asked him privately. That's when I made the offer. "What if I could pay the mortgage and you two could handle the utilities and maintenance?" His eyes lit up. "Really, Mom? You'd do that for us?" Of course. Frank would have wanted the grandchildren to grow up in a nice neighborhood with good schools. We found a beautiful 5-bedroom house with a large backyard. I set up an automatic payment for their mortgage every month. Michael and Tiffany were thrilled, and for a while everything was fine. The first few months they even invited me over for dinner every Sunday to express their gratitude. But something shifted after that. Tiffany's attitude toward me began to change subtly. She stopped asking about my day, stopped offering me coffee when I came to visit. The gratitude seemed to evaporate, replaced by expectation. I tried to ignore it. After all, I had my beautiful grandchildren and my son. That was what mattered most. Our Sunday family dinners had always been sacred. Even when Michael was in college, he would call home every Sunday evening. After he and Tiffany bought their first townhouse, they'd come over for pot roast or lasagna at least twice a month. But after I started paying their mortgage on the new house, those Sunday dinners at my place became increasingly rare. First it was, "Tiffany has a work emergency." Then, "The kids have so much homework to finish." Eventually, the excuses stopped coming altogether, and the invitations to their house became less frequent too. When I did visit their new home, I couldn't help but notice Tiffany's growing collection of luxury items: a new designer watch, shoes that I knew cost more than a month of my old teaching salary. Then came the day she pulled into the driveway in a brand new luxury SUV. "Isn't it gorgeous?" she gushed, running her hand over the sleek hood. "The dealership just got it in, and I knew it was meant for me." "It's very nice," I said carefully. "Was this planned in your budget?" Her smile faltered for just a moment. "We deserve nice things, Ramona. Life is short, as we all know." That reference to Frank's passing wasn't subtle. I changed the subject and asked about the children. Michael was changing too. My once attentive son now seemed distracted whenever we spoke. Our phone conversations grew shorter. He rarely asked how I was doing anymore. When I brought up memories of Frank or his childhood, he would quickly steer the conversation toward whatever new expense was looming. Dance lessons for Emma, a private baseball coach for Jack, the kitchen renovation Tiffany insisted they needed. The loneliness after Frank died was already difficult. Now feeling my son slip away made it even worse. I tried filling my days with volunteer work at the library and lunch dates with other retired teachers, but the hole in my heart remained. I still made every effort to be involved in my grandchildren's lives. I offered to pick them up from school or take them for weekends, but Tiffany always seemed to have a reason why it wasn't convenient. "Emma has a play date. Jack isn't feeling well. We already have plans." One day I stopped by unannounced with homemade cookies for the kids. As I approached the front door, I could hear Tiffany on the phone through the open window. "Gotta go. The ATM just pulled up," she said with a laugh. I froze on the doorstep, cookies in hand. Did she just refer to me as an ATM? I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell, pretending I hadn't heard. Later that week, I called Michael to talk about what I'd overheard. "Mom, you must have misunderstood," he said, sounding uncomfortable. "Tiffany would never say something like that. She's very grateful for everything you do for us." "I know what I heard, Michael." "Well, maybe it was just a bad joke. You know how Tiffany's sense of humor can be sometimes. Please don't make a big deal about this." I dropped it, not wanting to cause friction, but the comment stung deeply. Is that all I was to them now? A source of money. Still, I continued paying their mortgage and buying generous gifts for my grandchildren. What else could I do? They were my family, my only living connections to Frank. Tiffany grew bolder in her disrespect. She would check her phone while I was talking, make dismissive comments about my clothes or hair, and once even suggested I should update my look since I was back on the market. I was 67 and had no interest in dating after losing the love of my life, but Tiffany seemed to think my appearance was open for commentary. What hurt most was that Michael never stepped in. My once sweet, considerate son just watched silently as his wife treated me with increasing disdain. Sometimes I'd catch a flicker of discomfort on his face, but he never said a word in my defense. Our time together became strictly controlled by Tiffany's schedule. I was allowed to visit on Tuesday afternoons while she was at her spa appointments. I could attend the children's school performances, but wasn't invited to the celebration dinners afterward. I was permitted at birthday parties, but wasn't consulted about any of the planning, even though I often contributed financially. I kept my composure through it all. For Emma and Jack's sake, I smiled and pretended everything was fine. They loved their mother, and I would never say anything to damage that relationship. As April turned to May, I started thinking about Mother's Day. Last year had been my first without Frank and Michael, and the family had taken me to brunch. It wasn't the most relaxed meal with Tiffany checking her watch repeatedly, but at least we were together. This year I hoped we might start a new tradition. I circled Mother's Day on my calendar and started planning early. I bought a beautiful silk scarf for Tiffany in her favorite color, along with a gift certificate to that spa she loved so much. For the grandkids, I got craft supplies so they could make something special for their mom. I wanted to show Tiffany that I respected her role as a mother, hoping it might warm her heart toward me. 2 weeks before Mother's Day, I called Michael to discuss plans. "Hi, sweetheart. I was thinking about Mother's Day," I said after our usual pleasantries. "Oh, right. That's coming up soon," he replied, sounding distracted. In the background, I could hear Tiffany talking. "Mom, I've already made the lunch reservation for 1 o'clock. Dad said they'll come around noon to give you your gifts first." My heart sank. She was clearly planning something with her parents. "Michael, do you and Tiffany have something planned already?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Actually, we have some other plans that day," he said vaguely. "Other plans on Mother's Day." I couldn't hide my surprise. "Yeah, just some stuff we need to take care of. Maybe we can do something the weekend after." The discomfort in his voice was palpable. "Sure, that sounds fine," I replied, though it didn't feel fine at all. After we hung up, I sat staring at the phone. Something wasn't right. I opened Facebook on my tablet, something Frank had taught me to use before he passed, so I could see photos of the grandkids. Scrolling through Tiffany's page, my suspicion was confirmed. She had posted about a special Mother's Day celebration and tagged her mother Janet. So they were celebrating Mother's Day, just not with me. I picked up the phone again and called Michael back. "Sorry to bother you again," I said when he answered, "but I'm a little confused about Mother's Day. I just saw Tiffany's post about a celebration." There was a long pause, then I heard some murmuring in the background. "Let me talk to her," I heard Tiffany say. My stomach tightened as Tiffany's voice came on the line. "Ramona," she said coolly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're having a Mother's Day lunch at La Maison Bleue, but it's just for our immediate family." "I see," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady, "and I'm not considered immediate family." "Well, you know what I mean. It's for the mothers who are actively involved in the children's daily lives. My mom is coming because she picks the kids up from school 3 days a week and helps with homework. It's really a thank you for her constant presence." The implication was clear. My contributions weren't valued because they were financial rather than time-intensive, despite the fact that Tiffany limited my access to the children. "I see," I repeated, not knowing what else to say. "Look, Ramona," Tiffany continued, her voice hardening. "Let's be honest here. Mother's Day is for real mothers who actually care about being present, not just ATMs who show up with gifts occasionally." I gasped. She had actually said it out loud this time. "Tiffany," I heard Michael protest weakly in the background. "What, I'm just being honest," Tiffany replied to him, not bothering to cover the mouthpiece. "Your mother needs to understand her place. My place. After everything I'd done for them. I understand perfectly," I said, my voice shaking now. "Thank you for clarifying." "Great. We'll call you next week to set something up," she said dismissively. "Michael," I asked, hoping my son would take the phone, say anything to soften this blow. "He's busy with the kids right now," Tiffany lied. I could hear him in the background. "Goodbye, Ramona." The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, tears streaming down my face. I hadn't cried this hard since Frank's funeral. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. That evening I pulled out our family photo albums. Pictures of Michael as a baby, as a gap-toothed school kid, as a proud college graduate. Pictures of Frank and me beaming at Michael's wedding before we knew what Tiffany would become. Photos of me holding Emma and Jack as newborns, my face radiating with grandmother's love. Had I failed as a mother somewhere along the way? Had I raised my son to think it was acceptable to treat his mother this way? Or was it all Tiffany's influence? The questions swirled in my mind as I flipped through decades of family history. By midnight, as I finally put the albums away, one thing had become crystal clear: something needed to change. I couldn't continue to be used like this. Frank wouldn't have wanted this for me, and deep down, I knew I deserved better. I went to bed with tears still damp on my pillow, but also with the first stirrings of resolve forming in my heart. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying Tiffany's cruel words over and over in my mind. ATMs who show up with gifts occasionally. After everything I had done for them, this is how they saw me. When the first light of dawn filtered through my curtains, I reached for my phone and called Judith, my oldest friend who had supported me through Frank's illness and death. "They said what?" Judith exclaimed after I recounted the phone call. "Oh, Ramona, I'm so sorry. I just don't understand how it got to this point," I said, my voice hoarse from crying. "Listen to me," Judith said firmly. "They're using you. They have been for years. Frank would be furious if he could see how they're treating you." She was right. I could almost hear Frank's voice in my head, giving me the advice he'd repeated throughout our marriage whenever I faced a difficult situation at school. "Stand up for yourself, Ramona. You teach children to respect boundaries. Apply that lesson in your own life. But this wasn't some unruly third grader. This was my son and his wife. If I stood up for myself, what would that mean for my relationship with Emma and Jack? I don't want to lose my grandchildren, I whispered. You won't, Judith assured me. But you can't continue like this. Your mental health is suffering. Michael needs to understand that his behavior has consequences. After talking with Judith, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and a notepad. It was time to take stock of exactly what I had been providing to Michael and Tiffany. The mortgage payment $3,400 per month for the last 2 years. That alone totaled over $81,000. The down payment assistance, $50,000. College funds for the grandchildren, $20,000 each, with monthly contributions of $500 each. Birthday and Christmas gifts, special outings, extra expenses for the children, at least another $1,000 per month. Seeing it all written down in black and white was staggering. I had given them nearly $200,000 in just 2 years, and in return, I received diminishing time with my family and increasing disrespect. What kind of lesson was I teaching my son by allowing this to continue? What message was I sending to my grandchildren about how family members should treat each other? I thought back to my classroom days. When children misbehaved, there were always consequences applied with love, but also with firmness. Without consequences, bad behavior only escalated. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. My heart leapt when I saw it was Emma calling from her kid-friendly phone that I had purchased last Christmas. "Grandma, don't tell Mom, but I'm making you something super special for Mother's Day," she whispered excitedly. "Jack is helping too." My heart both warmed and broke simultaneously. The children didn't know I wasn't invited to the celebration. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart," I managed to say. "Mom says you might come over next weekend instead, but I wish you could come to the fancy restaurant with us and Grandma Janet." "Me too, Emma," I said softly, "but I'm sure you'll have a lovely time." After we hung up, my resolve strengthened. This situation wasn't just hurting me, it was creating confusion for the children too. I called my financial advisor, explaining the situation in broad strokes without going into the personal details. "You've been extremely generous," he said, "but if you want to make changes to the automatic payments, we can certainly do that. It's your money, Ramona." My money. Money I had earned through decades of teaching. Money Frank had earned and carefully invested for our future together, a future cut short by cancer. Not money I was obligated to give to ungrateful adult children who treated me like a bank. The decision crystallized. I would cancel next month's mortgage payment. It was due in 5 days on the 8th of May, right after Mother's Day. Perfect timing. I drafted an email to Michael, not trusting myself to have this conversation over the phone without breaking down. "Dear Michael, I've been reflecting on our family dynamics and financial arrangements. After careful consideration, I've decided to discontinue the automatic mortgage payments effective immediately. This means you and Tiffany will need to cover the May payment yourselves. I love you and the children deeply, but I cannot continue to provide financial support while being treated with such disrespect. When you're ready to discuss this further, I'm here. Love, Mom." My finger hovered over the send button for several minutes before I finally pressed it. I then called the bank and canceled the automatic payment. It felt both terrifying and liberating. For the first time since Frank died, I was standing up for my own worth. Mother's Day dawned bright and clear. I woke up alone in the house Frank and I had shared for 35 years, the house where we had raised Michael. For a moment I considered calling him, but pride and hurt kept me from reaching for the phone. Instead, I treated myself to breakfast at my favorite cafe, then spent a peaceful afternoon in the garden Frank had loved so much. I planted new flowers and talked to him as I worked, something I often did when missing him most. "I hope I'm doing the right thing," I murmured as I patted soil around a new rose bush. "But you always said we shouldn't let people take advantage of our kindness." Around 3 o'clock, I allowed myself to check Facebook. As expected, Tiffany had posted several photos of their Mother's Day celebration at the upscale French restaurant. There was Tiffany beaming in an expensive new dress, Janet, her mother, looking proudly at her daughter. Michael smiling, but with a tightness around his eyes I recognized from his childhood when he was unhappy but trying to hide it. And the children dressed in their Sunday best, holding handmade cards. Cards that should have included one for me. I logged off quickly, not wanting to torture myself further. No calls or messages came from Michael that day. Not even a text saying Happy Mother's Day. It confirmed everything I needed to know about where I stood in my son's priorities. The next morning, I received a notification from my bank confirming that the automatic payment to Michael and Tiffany's mortgage company had been canceled as requested. A sense of nervous anticipation filled me. Now we would see what happened. I didn't have to wait long. At precisely 10:17 that morning, my phone rang. Tiffany's name flashed on the screen. "Hello, Tiffany," I answered calmly. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she demanded without preamble. "The mortgage company just called to say our payment didn't go through. Yes, I canceled the automatic payment." I confirmed, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "You can't do that. We had an agreement." Her voice had risen to a shrill pitch I'd never heard before. "The agreement was predicated on mutual respect, which has been notably absent lately," I said, surprised by my own composure. As I explained in my email to Michael, I can't continue to provide financial support while being treated with such disrespect. "What are you talking about? Is this because of Mother's Day? Are you seriously that petty?" The disbelief in her voice was almost comical. "This is about much more than one day, Tiffany. This is about months of being treated like nothing more than a bank account, being called an ATM, being excluded from family events, being prevented from spending time with my grandchildren unless it's convenient for you. So you're punishing us financially? Do you have any idea what this will do to us, to your grandchildren?" Her attempt to manipulate me through the children was predictable. "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply adjusting my contributions to match the level of respect I've been shown. My relationship with Emma and Jack is separate from this issue. You can't just pull the rug out from under us like this. The payment is due today." Now there was panic in her voice. "I'm sure you and Michael can figure something out. You both have good jobs." "This is unbelievable," she sputtered. "After everything we've done for you." That made me pause. "Everything you've done for me. Please enlighten me. What exactly have you done for me since Frank died?" The silence on the other end was telling. "That's what I thought," I said softly. "Tell Michael to call me when he's ready to talk." I hung up my hands, shaking, but my resolve intact. Michael called an hour later, his voice a mixture of anger and fear. "Mom, what's going on? Tiffany said you canceled the mortgage payment." "That's correct," I confirmed. "Why would you do that without talking to me first? We're counting on that money." "I did try to talk to you, Michael. I sent you an email explaining my decision." "I've been busy. I didn't check my personal email," he said dismissively. "Look, whatever's going on, we need that payment. The mortgage company doesn't accept late payments without penalties." "I understand that, but this is no longer my responsibility. You and Tiffany need to figure it out. We can't just come up with $3,400 out of nowhere." The panic in his voice was rising. "Michael," I said gently, "you and Tiffany make good money. You should be able to afford your own mortgage. If you can't, perhaps you should consider downsizing to a home that fits your actual budget." "We have expenses, Mom. The kids' activities, the car payments, Tiffany's business wardrobe." "Those are choices you've made," I pointed out. "Choices that apparently took priority over treating your mother with basic respect." There was a long pause. When Michael spoke again, his voice was lower, less defiant. "This is about Mother's Day, isn't it? It's about much more than that, though. That was certainly the final straw. It's about Tiffany referring to me as the ATM. It's about being excluded from family events. It's about you standing by while your wife treats me with increasing disrespect, despite everything I've done to support your family." "Tiffany doesn't mean those things, Mom. She just says stuff sometimes." "And you never correct her. You never stand up for me." Another silence. Then, "We really need that payment, Mom. We can't cover it ourselves this month. We've been living pretty close to the edge financially." That admission surprised me. With their combined salaries and my substantial contributions, how could they be struggling? What about Tiffany's parents? Can they help? Michael laughed bitterly. "Janet and Robert, they're worse off than we are. They put on a good show, but they're drowning in debt. That's where Tiffany learned her spending habits." "I see." The pieces were falling into place. Michael, I'm sorry you're in a difficult position, but I need you to understand that actions have consequences. I can't continue to support you financially while being treated like an outsider in my own family. So what, this is some kind of punishment? His voice had turned angry again. No, it's a boundary, one that should have been established long ago. Great, just great. So we could lose our house because you're feeling unappreciated. That's just perfect, Mom. The sarcasm in his voice cut deep. I'm sorry you see it that way, I said, fighting to keep my emotions in check. When you're ready to discuss how we move forward with mutual respect, I'm here. Whatever, he muttered, and the line went dead. I set the phone down and took a deep breath. The conversation had gone about as expected, but it still hurt. The silence that followed was deafening. One day passed, then another. No calls from Michael, no texts, no visits from the grandchildren. I began to wonder if I had made a terrible mistake. Had I just destroyed my relationship with my only family? The doubt crept in, but each time it did, I reminded myself of Tiffany's cruel words and Michael's silent complicity. Some things simply couldn't be allowed to continue. On the fourth day after our phone confrontation, a knock at my door startled me from my gardening magazine. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I found Emma and Jack standing there with Michael hovering uncertainly behind them. "Surprise, Grandma!" Emma shouted, thrusting a colorful handmade card toward me. "Happy late Mother's Day." "We missed you," Jack said, wrapping his arms around my waist. Tears sprang to my eyes as I hugged them both. "I missed you too, my darlings, so very much." I looked up at Michael, who seemed uncomfortable, but managed a small smile. "The kids really wanted to see you," he explained, "and they made you something special." Come in, I said, ushering them inside. "I just baked oatmeal cookies this morning." The children's faces lit up at that news. Once the kids were settled at the kitchen table with cookies and milk, Michael gestured toward the living room. "Can we talk for a minute, Mom?" I nodded and followed him, my heart pounding. Was this the beginning of reconciliation, or just another confrontation? "Where's Tiffany?" I asked as we sat down. Michael sighed. "At home. She's processing everything." "I see." "Look, Mom," he began hesitantly. "I want to apologize for how things went down on Mother's Day. It wasn't right to exclude you, and I should have stood up to Tiffany about it." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. "The thing is," he said, lowering his voice and glancing toward the kitchen to make sure the children couldn't hear, "Tiffany was the one who insisted you shouldn't be invited. She said it should just be her and her mom since they do the daily childcare stuff. I told her it wasn't fair, but she can be pretty convincing when she wants something." "That doesn't explain why you went along with it," I said quietly. "Or why you didn't even call me that day." He looked down at his hands. "I know. There's no excuse. I guess I've gotten used to taking the path of least resistance with Tiffany. It's easier than fighting." "And now what's changed?" Michael took a deep breath. "The mortgage thing was a wake-up call. We really can't make the payment on our own right now. We've been living way beyond our means, Mom." "With your salaries, I find that hard to believe." "It's the truth. Tiffany." He hesitated, then seemed to decide to be completely honest. "Tiffany has a shopping problem, credit card debt, lots of it. I didn't even know how bad it was until recently. She's been hiding statements from me. When I finally saw them last month, I was shocked. We owe over $60,000 across different cards, all at high interest rates." I sat back stunned. $60,000, Michael. How did it get so bad? "A little at a time, designer clothes for work, expensive toys for the kids, home decor. It just kept adding up, and with you covering the mortgage, we had the false sense that we could afford it all." He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "I should have put my foot down, but it was easier to just let her handle the finances. I trusted her. And now we're in serious trouble. If we miss this mortgage payment, it could affect our credit score, which is already taking hits from the high credit card balances. We could potentially lose the house if we start falling behind." "What about the children? How will this affect them?" "That's what I'm most worried about," Michael admitted. "They love their home, their school, their friends. I don't want to uproot them because of our financial mistakes." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation settling between us. "Mom," Michael finally said, looking me in the eyes for the first time since arriving. "I know we've treated you terribly, and you have every right to be angry. But I'm asking for your help, not just with the mortgage, but with figuring out how to fix this mess. I want things to be different going forward." "And Tiffany? Does she feel the same way?" He sighed. "She's angry right now, but she's also scared. She knows we can't afford the house without your help. I think she's ready to make changes, but it won't be easy." I thought carefully before responding. "Michael, I love you and the grandchildren more than anything. I want to help, but I can't go back to the way things were. If I'm going to continue supporting you financially, things need to change dramatically." "What kind of changes?" he asked cautiously. "First, I need to be treated as a valued family member, not a bank account. That means regular time with the grandchildren, inclusion in family events, and basic respect from both you and Tiffany." He nodded. "Second, you both need to get your finances under control. That might mean credit counseling, a strict budget, and lifestyle changes." "I agree," he said quickly. "We need help with that." "And third, I think we should consider family counseling. There are deep issues here that won't be resolved overnight." Michael looked relieved rather than resistant. "That sounds reasonable, more than reasonable given everything." Before we could continue, the phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID and saw Tiffany's name. "It's your wife," I said, showing him the screen. Michael took a deep breath. "She's probably wondering why we've been gone so long. Maybe it's time for all of us to talk." I nodded and answered the call, putting it on speakerphone. "Hello, Tiffany," I said evenly. "Is Michael there?" she asked, her voice tight. "I'm here," Michael confirmed. "Mom and I have been talking." "And did you convince her to pay the mortgage?" The bluntness of her question made me wince. "Tiffany," Michael said with more firmness than I'd heard from him in years, "that's not how this conversation is going to go. Mom has valid concerns about how we've been treating her, and we need to address those before discussing financial arrangements." There was a shocked silence on the other end of the line. Then, in a slightly more subdued tone, Tiffany asked, "So what does she want?" "I'm right here, Tiffany," I interjected. "And what I want is to be treated with the respect I deserve as Michael's mother and your children's grandmother. I want to be included in family events, have regular time with Emma and Jack, and never hear myself referred to as an ATM again." Another pause. "Fine," she said finally. "Is that it?" "No," I continued. "I also want you both to get your financial situation under control. Michael has told me about the credit card debt." "He what?" Tiffany's voice rose sharply. "Michael, that was private." "No more secrets, Tiffany," Michael said firmly. "We need to be honest about everything if we're going to fix this." After a tense moment, Tiffany asked, "So what are you proposing, Ramona?" "Family counseling for starters. I'll help pay for that. And I think we should have a weekly family dinner alternating between my house and yours." "And the mortgage," Tiffany pressed. "Will you keep paying it?" I took a deep breath. "I'm willing to continue helping with the mortgage temporarily while you get your finances in order. But over time, you two need to take on more responsibility for your own expenses. This arrangement was never meant to be permanent." The silence stretched out so long, I wondered if she had hung up. "Tiffany," Michael prompted. "I'm thinking," she snapped. Then, in a more measured tone, "I guess we don't have much choice, do we?" "You always have choices," I said gently. "But every choice has consequences." "Fine," she said finally. "We'll do the counseling and the dinners, and I'll try to be more respectful, but I need some time to adjust to all this." "That's fair," I acknowledged. "Change doesn't happen overnight, but the effort needs to start immediately." "Agreed," Michael said quickly. "Then I'll make this month's mortgage payment," I said. "And we can schedule our first family dinner for this Sunday." "Fine," Tiffany agreed, still sounding reluctant, but no longer openly hostile. After we hung up, Michael looked at me with a mixture of gratitude and shame. "Thank you, Mom. I know we don't deserve your help after how we've treated you." "Everyone deserves a second chance," I said, squeezing his hand. "But not necessarily a third or fourth. Remember that." He nodded solemnly. "I will." As we walked back to the kitchen, where the children were happily drawing pictures for my refrigerator, I felt cautiously optimistic. The path ahead would be challenging, but at least we were taking the first steps together. 6 months have passed since that pivotal Mother's Day confrontation, and our family has undergone remarkable changes. The weekly family counseling sessions, while sometimes uncomfortable, have been tremendously helpful in rebuilding our relationships. Michael has truly stepped up, working overtime to start paying down their debt and even taking a financial management course at the community college. He calls me regularly now, not just when they need something. We've resumed our Sunday dinners, alternating between my house and theirs, and the conversation flows much more naturally these days. Tiffany's transformation has been more gradual, but equally significant. The counselor suggested she seek individual therapy for her spending habits, which she reluctantly agreed to after hitting rock bottom with the credit cards. Tiffany still loves beautiful things, but she's learning to distinguish between wants and needs. Last month, she actually returned an expensive purse she had bought on impulse, something that would have been unthinkable before. My relationship with my grandchildren has blossomed. I pick them up from school twice a week now, giving Tiffany's mother a break and providing me with precious time with Emma and Jack. Emma and I have started a fairy garden in my backyard, while Jack and I build model airplanes like his grandfather used to do. These simple activities have created bonds that no amount of expensive gifts could have established. The financial arrangement has evolved too. I still help with the mortgage, but have reduced my contribution gradually. Michael and Tiffany now cover 40% with the plan to increase their share by 10% every 6 months until they take full responsibility. It's a relief to see them living within their means for the first time. We still have our difficult moments. Tiffany occasionally slips into her old patterns when stressed, and Michael sometimes falls back into conflict avoidance. I'm not perfect either, sometimes being too quick to reference past hurts. But the difference now is that we acknowledge these lapses and work through them instead of letting resentment build. Standing up for myself that day was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but also one of the most necessary. By refusing to continue enabling their unhealthy behavior, I forced a crisis that ultimately led to healing. Frank would be proud, I think. He always believed in the importance of self-respect alongside love. "You can't truly love others if you don't value yourself," he used to say. It took me nearly 70 years to fully embrace that wisdom, but better late than never. Judith has been my rock throughout this journey, offering encouragement during the difficult early days when I wasn't sure if my relationship with Michael could be salvaged. "Family relationships require work from all sides," she reminded me when I was losing hope. "Give it time." She was right. Time combined with consistent boundaries and open communication has worked wonders. Beyond my family relationships, I've found new fulfillment in volunteer work at the elementary school where I taught for so many years. 3 mornings a week, I help struggling readers improve their skills using the same patience and persistence that helped me rebuild my family connections. This year's Mother's Day was everything last year's should have been. Michael and Tiffany hosted a lovely brunch at their home with both Tiffany's parents and me in attendance. The children presented us each with handmade gifts, and there was no hierarchy of importance, no exclusion, just 3 generations celebrating together. If there's one lesson I've learned through all of this, it's that love without boundaries isn't really love at all, it's enabling. By canceling that mortgage check, I wasn't just standing up for myself, I was actually giving my son the opportunity to become the man his father and I raised him to be. The journey isn't over, of course. Real change takes time and constant effort, but I'm no longer just the ATM or the grandmother who's tolerated for her financial contributions. I'm Ramona, mother, grandmother, teacher, and woman of strength who finally learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more reflections on family relationships and life lessons learned the hard way. Share this with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves while still maintaining love for their family. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, it's never too late to create healthier relationships with those you love.